Hello, my friends, ladies and gentlemen. We are here again for Crazy Talks with Wise People. Today, we're going to talk about a very important, very, if not the most, I think, yeah, one of the most important things in our life, marriage. For all of you who are married and for all of you who are planning to get married, you have to stay put. You have to listen to this podcast because our guest for today will speak about how to make our respective marriages successful. He has been married for 47 long years and still going strong and still in love with his wife, and his wife still in love with him too. I envy him. All right. He is an Anglican priest and writer, speaker, and trainer on marriage and renewal. He's a rector at St. Simon's Church. He is also an assistant priest. He was rather an assistant priest at St. Matthew's Abbotsford. He was an assistant priest at St. Philip's Dunbar. He finished at Carey Theological College. He also studied in Vancouver for his MDiv, Masters of Divinity, Vancouver School of Theology. He is a licensed leadership breakthrough coach. He's got a lot of credentials. I'm not going to read everything, but I think I have introduced him properly. Let's all welcome the Reverend Dr. Ed Hurd. Reverend, please welcome our viewers. And if there's something that I missed during the introduction, please add.
Yeah, thank you so much for your warm welcome. I'd like to greet your viewers. And marriage is something that can be a win-win for everyone, whether you're currently married, considering marriage, or you want to encourage other people's healthy marriages in your networks. I should add, I was at St. Simon's in North Vancouver for 31 years, but for the last 7 years, I've been out in Crescent Beach near the United States at All Saints Community Church for 7 years, a wonderful congregation. I did my doctorate in 2013. I completed it and did my doctoral thesis in the area of strengthening marriages. How can we bridge the emotional cutoff that often happens and leads to divorce? And divorce, which is so common in our culture, can often leave deep trauma. I've been privileged to work with people to get stable, lasting, satisfying marriages. This one couple, Pat and Janine, they got divorced in 1996 during a strike, and 6 years later, I had the privilege of remarrying them. And they came to a Father's Day service at our church, and she came up with her ex-husband for communion, and kneeling at the altar, well, she said to me, "Someday I'd like to marry Pat." again. Now, she'd said that to me several times before, and I said to her, "Why not now?" And she said, "Yes." And of course, he was thrilled. She kicked him out 6 years earlier during a strike, and her family were all Marxist Leninists. So they took strikes very seriously. And so I lent them my wedding ring, and we had an amazing celebration. Then we found that I had to marry them again to make it legal because they needed a marriage license. I already had one, but in Canada, they needed one. So I brought them back the next Saturday and we married them for a third time. And they're the only couple I know that have been divorced once and married 3 times to the same person. And then I did marriage prep with them, and I discovered there were no stable marriages or relationships in their family system. And I can tell you that with the teaching we gave them, they were able to have a stable, satisfying marriage. And I recently took Janine's funeral, and everybody, all the family, came to her funeral, and I shared the miracle of their marriage being restored. When I was meeting with them for strengthening marriages, they said to me, "I wish our daughter, Michelle, would get married." She was living with Joe, her partner, and they had a 6-year-old who came to our Sunday school. And they said, they don't want to get married. And I said to Janine, "Have you ever apologized to Michelle for kicking your husband out?" And she said, "No, I never thought of that." I said, "Why don't you try it?" So she did something very unusual. She apologized to her daughter. The next thing that happened, the daughter, Michelle, phones me up and says, "I want you to take our wedding between myself and Joe." And their daughter, Jersey, she was one part of the wedding, and she carried a little banner called "Here Comes the Bride." So I love it. And we can help bring a new culture of stable, healthy relationships.
All right. Thank you for sharing. That was a very touching story. Now, in all these years of you being a marriage counselor, you and your wife, will you please share with us what are the common causes of misunderstanding that causes emotional strain between couples? And, emotional strain can lead to divorce sometimes. So, what are the common causes?
Well, men and women often listen in different ways.
Men and women
When
listen in different ways.
they often listen differently. Now, I'm generalizing, everybody's different, but generally speaking, women give a lot more feedback. They'll be saying,
Women are
yes.
more laid back, you mean?
No, they will give more communication, more feedback.
Uh-huh.
They will share things like when they're talking, they will say, "Tell me more," or "Yes," or
Yeah,
"I
yeah,
agree."
yeah.
But men sometimes, when they're listening,
Mm-hmm.
they don't say anything,
Mm-hmm.
and so the woman will think that he's not listening. So we encourage the man to give more feedback, active, what's called active detached listening. And one of the things I've been training, I have 3 adult sons. And so I was recently teaching one of them, training them how to communicate with his wife. And I say, don't respond, particularly don't be defensive. Instead, what I want you to do is feedback to her what you heard her say, and then ask if that's what she said. And it was amazing how much that dropped the tension and increased her sense that he was actually listening. What we found is he was listening better than she realized, but he wasn't acknowledging what she was saying. He was immediately going to his point of view. But a couple, unless you acknowledge that you've really heard the other person, then they'll just feel that you're being defensive or you're stonewalling them. Now, there is a famous marriage coach in Seattle, Dr. John Gottman, and he runs something called the Marriage Lab. And they've had thousands of couples stay over on a weekend, and they study them scientifically. And they found that there are 5 what they call horsemen of the apocalypse. Like the book of Revelation, there are 4 key indicators of divorce, and they can predict.
4 key
Yeah,
indicators
yeah,
for divorce. What are those?
yeah, and they can predict the likelihood of divorce in watching a couple within 15 minutes based on these 4 indicators. The first one is criticism.
Criticism.
Couples likely to divorce, basically have way more criticism than affirmation. But the couples that are successful, they have 5 positives for every 1 negative. Now, a lot of couples think if I say a positive thing and a negative thing, it equals out. But emotionally, that isn't true. We emotionally need 5 compliments or affirmations for every 1 criticism. And so that's one of the keys. The second horseman of the apocalypse is defensiveness. And men,
the second horseman in the apocalypse is defensive.
yeah, defensiveness. This is speaking symbolically. And defensiveness is the tendency, like I was talking about, rather than listening and feeding back, we go into, our point of view and we dismiss the other person's point of view. And a lot of men struggle with that. I struggled with that when I was younger, and I've improved, but I have to guard against it. And then the third horseman of the apocalypse is called stone walling, to stonewall. And when we taught about that in Africa, nobody knew what that meant. We spoke to 30,000 people at once on marriage in conferences in Africa, Uganda, and Rwanda. So what it means is putting up a huge wall. So you're shutting the person out of your life. And men tend to do that when the conversation gets too emotionally intense. The research shows that men flood emotionally before women do. Their heart rate increases, their blood pressure goes up, and it's really hard for them to listen. And often women, the wife will press in at that moment when he's stonewalling because she's trying to break through. But a better response is we change the couples. He's flooded, so he can't really hear you. And that's sometimes when violence happens or shutting down. And so we recommend that the husband or the wife says, I'm flooded. I need 15 minutes or half an hour or an hour to go for a walk and calm down. And I'm not stomping out. I'm going to come back in the 15 they agreed upon time. And we found that's a very helpful technique for diffusing the situation. And then when the person is calmed down, they can pick up. So stonewalling is a key one. And then the fourth horseman of the apocalypse, according to John Gottman, and this is very key in divorce, is contempt. And women often slip into this one. It's basically when they're disgusted with their husband and they begin to look down on him and treat him, some people say treat him like dirt, but contempt, it's the self-righteousness, the superior. And a lot of, it's hard for men and women to understand each other. You may have heard of the old musical My Fair Lady, and came out of England. And the men said in this song, why can't a woman be more like a man? Men are so sensible. And she sung, just you wait, Henry Eakins, just you wait, you'll be sorry, but your tears will get to, you'll be broken, I'll have money. So basically, men and women, they struggle to understand each other and they can go to contempt. But contempt is a killer. And the Bible teaches us, rather than contempt to bitterness and anger, we go to forgiveness and apology. And there's 5 languages of apology. Would you like me to tell you about them?
Sure.
Yeah, Dr. Gary Chapman, you may have heard about him. He wrote the best-selling book, 5 Languages of Love. Very helpful book.
Of love. Okay.
Yeah, and that's
what are
but
the
he
5
also,
languages of love?
Okay, well, the first one is words of affirmation. Some of us, that's our language. I am a language of love or affirmation. So if my wife compliments me, I can live on a compliment for several weeks. But my wife, that's not such a big, I can tell her I love her and she's beautiful. That's okay. But what she really wants of me is the second language, which is deeds of action.
Yeah.
And so if I tell her I love her, that's nice. But if I take out the garbage, or if I wash the dishes, or do those actions mean a lot more. That's how she feels love. So we all have different languages. So then the third language is gift giving. So for some people, particularly wealthy people, their language of love is they will give a big gift to, say, their children or their spouse. But maybe they're not doing the fourth language, which is personal time, intentional time. And so they're giving money, but they're not spending quality time. And now for some people, quality
again? Okay, affirmation.
The third one is gift giving.
Gift, okay.
The fourth one is quality time.
Quality
now, for time. Some people, quality time isn't a big deal, but for others, it's huge. And you have to learn what is my fiance or my boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse's favorite language of love. Because if you're not using it, they won't fill up. And then the fifth language is touch,
All right.
physical touch,
It's already
and
six. Affirmation,
well,
deeds, gift, quality time, and deeds. One, two, three, four, five. Oh, all right. So only five. Okay.
yeah,
So we got
and for
five.
some
Right.
people, like when I go for a walk and hold my wife's hand,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big deal. For in
Mm-hmm.
Africa, they don't do that, and so they noticed I was walking, and some of them started to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go for a walk
Mm-hmm.
and hold her hand, that's very romantic.
Mm,
Now, a lot of
exactly.
husbands,
Exactly. Yes.
they do romance before
Mm,
the marriage,
mm,
but then they neglect their wife after the marriage, and they think the marriage will take care of itself. But a good marriage, you have to romance your wife even after you married her on a regular basis. It's very important to nurture
mm,
and romance her.
and romance.
What Ephesians chapter 5 says, to love
Mm,
and to cherish.
mhm.
Now, Dr. Gary Chapman, he wrote a sequel book, and in Africa, we taught him this everywhere. This is the five languages of apology. And this is where a lot of marriages crash
All
and
right.
burn.
Okay. Let me just interject for a while, Reverend. Okay. Just for the sake of our listeners, let us summarize what you've said a little bit, and then we can go on further.
Yeah, go for it.
So you said that the common grounds, I mean, not grounds, but the common causes of divorce um, among marriages are the following. When we criticize more rather than affirm more. Number two, if there's defensiveness between the two, if we stonewall each other, and if there's contempt. Uh, and the best solution to all this to prevent us from divorcing our partners is to forgive. So sometimes this happens, like stonewalling, criticism more than affirm, more than affirming each other. There's defensiveness, there's stonewalling. It is because we miscommunicate. Okay, we miscommunicate. And you added on that for us as couples, because as marriage couples, the love that we must espouse between, bet- between uh, our husband and wife, I mean, between our spouses, is based on agape love and eros love. That's eros and agape. So there are five language of love in terms of eros relationships. First is we must affirm one another. What is affirmation? It's simply giving them positive feedback about themselves. But other people really don't go for affirmations. This is not the love language. Others resonate with deeds. So you just don't tell them you love them, they're beautiful, and then you snub them. You don't appreciate them. So because love is not a noun, it's a verb. So it's a verb. You must show them that you love them. So it's deeds. Okay, another one is gift, like you shower them gifts. Gift as a woman, it's not necessarily giving them diamonds and mansions and expensive cars. As simple as a flower, you know, as simple as a small card or letter, as long as it came from your heart and it was thoughtfully given. Next is quality time. Yes. Sometimes we are so busy doing things, sometimes busy with friends that you don't anymore have time with your wife. Sometimes busy with career that you don't have any more time with your spouse. So we need to correct that. And then touch. Yes, touch. Touch is the foundation of romance. Since we are called into this relationship called eros relationship, we are called to a romantic relationship. So we should not stop romancing each other. So, Reverend, my question here is, um, romance is very hot, when during the courtship and during the early days of marriage. But then when when you live with each other, you sleep with each other day in and day out, sometimes it became relationship becomes the eros, the romance dies down. It backslides to like a family, like just brothers and sisters. There's no romance anymore. So how do you keep the romance alive? I think this is what we're missing in the marriage. We become focused with many other things like children, household chores, bills to pay, finances, and then we forget about romance. So how do we keep the romance hot and alive in marriage, even if it is already like 47 years like yours?
Yeah, so you are a very good listener. You summarized that really well. You said it better than I did. That's good. So one of the ways that a marriage can be strengthened is actually to do what you just did there, is to do that active, detached listening. Now, every husband, what he needs for here's how a woman can strengthen a relationship with her husband. She needs to connect to his soul. And husbands have a tendency, you may have noticed, to repeat themselves. And the wife can think, I've heard it before, I don't really need to listen, because he's just talking again about his car or his work or his sports or
Mm.
his hobbies. But what you need to realize that he's repeating himself because his soul is attached to those things. So you need to listen deeply to what he's talking about. You need to lean into it to do that feedback, because then you will connect to his soul. The research shows that many affairs happen because the person who he's committing adultery with, that person doesn't really care about him. So that person is a good listener because they don't care. Where the wife has stopped listening because it's too threatening. Sometimes men have these wild ideas. They want to sell off the house or go away to an island. And these ideas are destabilizing. So the wife will dismiss the husband's ideas rather than listen. Now, if a woman listens deeply, she connects to his soul and she can always give him additional input later. But the point is connecting. That's one of the ways to rekindle the romance. Let me tell you how the husband can rekindle the romance. It's in an acronym HUS.
All right, Reverend, rekindling the romance. Okay, we're done with 30 minutes, but please don't go away. Okay, folks, Crazy Talks with wise people will be back. Okay, we'll be back next week, and Reverend here will answer my question. How do you kindle the romance in your relationship? Thank you very much. We already had offered you the summary. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Reverend Hurd, for joining us today. But you will be answering my question on the next podcast. Don't go away also, Reverend. Okay. After
Happy
this
to.
episode, Reverend Hurd will have something to tell you. Okay? His parting words. All right?
Forgiveness is at the heart of the gospel. You remember Jesus on the cross, one of his last words are, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. In the Lord's Prayer, he said, teaches us, forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. We're all sinners. We're going to sin against each other. We're going to hurt each other. And forgiveness and repentance are key to a healthy marriage.
All right, Reverend, thank you so much. Forgiveness and repentance are key to a happy marriage. So we will end to this, but we will go for I'm sure all of you who are married right now, you know, you're together, we are together with our with our respective partners because we just didn't want to be alone, or there are just some other reasons, but romance is already dead. But you know, as like what I've said, we are called into this eros romantic relationship. Very interesting topic for next week. Reverend Hurd will be back here next week, and he will tell us and teach us details about how to rekindle romance in marriage so that you will be in love even if you've been together for 47 years, like our guest, like Reverend Hurd here, is still in love, and his wife is still in love, and they are still pursuing a romantic relationship. How sweet is that? How cool is that? Thank you very much for joining us for today. Thank you, Reverend Hurd. Thank you, Crazy Talks with Wise People friends, and we'll be back. This is Mary Angela Morta, thanking you for joining us every week. Bye for now.